This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. Fan. Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
Kevin Seifert coming up after the Top 5 at 5. We'll give you a football fix at that point. What do you got?
Let's start with the Wolves. We're going to start with today, not yesterday. We know that they lost. We might hear one Mike Conley soundbite, but this Chris Finch soundbite was long. It was lengthy, and might get some people going. Maybe not, but on what he'll think about and remember about this season.
Yeah, I think pretty rewarding. I think it is probably my encapsulation of the season, just because we went through a lot of trials and tribulations. I'm not going to lie, it was an incredibly fun season for me at times, and I don't think it was for our guys. But we always found a way to kind of figure it out and get better, and and that was the rewarding part. The way that, listen, I mean, been in sports long enough. You guys follow sports. Like, this shit never ends well. It don't matter if you lose by 40 or you lose at the buzzer. There's only one way that it ends well. So to sit here and ruminate about how the season ends, or how much it hurts a fan base, or how much it hurts a player or whatever, or some long-suffering franchise, like every city, every sports team goes through the same stuff, You should be an Eagles fan in the 80s. It wasn't fun. But yeah, we're making up for it, right? I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, it was a rough childhood. So yeah, I just think consistency of approach and putting yourself in the place time and again to get enough chances to do it. I mean, how many times did Boston have to get there before that's what the league is about right now. We're about to have our 7th different champion in 7 seasons. Unprecedented.
A lot there in 90 seconds. What stands out?
There's a lot there. And, to his one of his last points, I think the moral seemed to be, look, Boston had to take several bites of the apple before they got anywhere. And in fact, when they didn't, as they were struggling to get to the promised land, there was a lot of hue and cry that you can't keep their big two together. Who are the names in their backcourt?
Brown and Tatum.
That it's not going to work. They don't have it. There's something missing. And in Boston, they said, we're hanging with them. We're going to build around them. We're going to add some pieces around them. And it worked. So to that extent, he's not wrong. On the other hand, you could already say, well, on that basis of that logic, you guys didn't hang last year in bringing back the same core. You went at it a different way, which finances had a lot to do with that. We get it. But, there are times when an organization hangs. There are times when an organization says, we're not going to kid ourselves here. We've seen some stuff that we need to tweak. So, look, I'm not surprised that it sounds like he's a little defensive about the public reaction to what took place,
which has been very
negative in
negative.
Game 5, and it's been negative. And I think, to me, it's easy for me to say because it's not my team, but that he has to have a better understanding that even if, in the cosmic sense, people might come to a place eventually to start thinking about, they did get back to the Final Four 2 straight years, no matter how they did it. And this is not a franchise that, has no history of doing that. But people are invested now, I would say, to Finchie, in a way that
financially and emotionally.
They're on all levels.
Of tickets.
And and let's just stay with the emotional investment. If you want to just even stay with that, they care more than they ever did before, in part because, the expectations and the standards have finally ascended to a much higher place. So you have to understand and accept that they're not going to go, golly gee, coach, I know you guys really tried hard, and you're playing a really good team, and it just didn't work out. in Game 5. Give people 5 minutes to get out their rage about what Sam Mitchell said was an unacceptable way to go out. There was literally nothing in that performance that showed they had any real, beyond the words, any real inclination to fight back. At no point, even in the first quarter of the game, and it wasn't just about missing shots, even though that exacerbated the situation. So I don't think he's being very realistic about that part of it. Keeping your eye on the ball long term and not overreacting, that's what the best general managers do. But this is not a general manager who sits, they didn't sit pat last year.
No, or even the couple years before
that, when he said, well, we had a pretty good core here. And he said, well, where are we? We can go this far, but how much further? Now, a lot of people have said, I think rightly so, that in effect, what Conley's goal all along was, we're trying to match up with Denver. And they did. And they dethroned Denver.
Yeah.
And they dominated Denver this season during the regular season. And now maybe you got to take a fresh look at it because clearly Oklahoma City has become the predominant team. And to that extent, maybe then that changes some of your decision-making process.
Well, the Knicks hang in tonight. They're down 3-1, hosting Game 5 at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks, Dan, are 4.5-point favorites. 4.5-point favorites.
I would expect the Knicks to win, but as we've talked about before, the Pacers aren't going to mail it in like, well, we know Game 6 is back home. Nobody expects us to win in New York right now. That's not the way they play. That's one of the great things I like, things I really appreciate about the Pacers is they just play, man. They keep coming at you. They're relentless in a different way than Oklahoma City. To be honest, I think from a basketball standpoint, not necessarily a marketing standpoint, but a basketball standpoint, I'm pretty convinced that's the matchup. Pacers-Oklahoma City is the most interesting matchup, even if, obviously the league would rather have a bigger market involved.
Quick congratulations to Lou Nanny and all his friends. Seeds planted in South Florida condos years ago, continuing to bear fruit. The Florida Panthers are back in the Stanley Cup final. They knocked off Carolina last night 5-3 to advance to the finals. They now await the winner of Edmonton and Dallas, and they could have an opponent tonight. A game you will hear right here on the Fan. The Oilers lead the Stars 3-1. So after Fan on Demand on the air tonight, you will hear Edmonton and Dallas Game 5. So congrats to Louie and all his friends for continuing to grow the game.
Can you say mission accomplished?
I think you could.
At this point, I think you certainly can.
You could probably move, but he won't.
No, I definitely won't. Yeah, he ain't moving back here. We know that.
Real quick, I think at least on a couple of days, you are going to be a big Minnesota Golden Gopher football fan. They got kick times for 6 games of their 12. We knew the first game.
We got 2 Fridays, don't we?
We got 2 Fridays.
That's where I'm going to be happy?
You're going to be happy because we will be done at 5 o'clock on each of those Fridays. Actually, you'll only be done half an hour early on the second Friday.
Damn it.
We host Nebraska on Friday, October 17th, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And then when they head out to Oregon about a month later, November 14th, that's a Friday game against the Ducks. That's an 8 o'clock Central start. So you'll get out about 6. So there you go. First game, the second Thursday of the State Fair, August 28th, 7 o'clock.
Who is our season opener?
Buffalo.
Not the Bills.
Not the Bills.
The University of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Okay.
At Huntington Bank
Wasn't
Stadium.
our opener last year against a good team?
North Carolina, we lost.
That's right. We did as a kick. Yeah, the kick killed us. That's right. Wide left.
That was tough.
Was it wide left or wide right? I don't remember.
I think it was wide.
That might have been wide right.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right in that case.
I can't remember.
I don't think anybody felt any better about it, even though it was wide right rather than wide left.
Nope, none of that.
So Kevin Seifert is coming up. Is that correct?
He's ready.
Outstanding. Cage is vacant. McDaniels with the flagrant. Randall is complacent. Wolves in 9. Well, one thing we know, the football season never ends. So what we might have called post-Wolves elimination and the Wild elimination from about, 2 months ago, the abyss concept doesn't really exist any longer. There is baseball, but beyond that, the football season never rests, and our next guest can testify to that very fact. Kevin Seifert of ESPN joining us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. it appears to me that you've gotten yourself into a little, I don't know if I call it a Twitter battle, but a Twitter debate that I'm intrigued by. I'm going to read you something you sent out, I think, about 10 hours ago. I've struggled to square what I've seen of J.J. McCarthy, 2024/25, with some pre-draft assignments of his arm. He's not Elway, Favre, or even Sam Darnold, but he makes the throws. Maybe I'll be proven wrong when the games start, but for now, it's not a top-of-mind issue. And somebody named Adam Olson, who describes himself as a media personality, responded. He threw it 61 miles per hour at the combine. Not sure if you're saying his arm looks slow or if it looks fast. And then I think you responded to him. I don't even remember. Oh, yeah, by saying, well, I'll let you explain what you said here. So what's going on here? Is this under the classification of we need the clicks, it's off season, there's not that much to talk about? I mean, is there a real debate that is worth discussing regarding whether McCarthy's got a limp of throwing arm?
No, it's just something that occurred to me this morning, and I tweeted it out there, and apparently didn't do a very good job of making my point. But pre-draft, which a year and a half ago or so, one of the knocks, everyone looks for knocks on everybody that is in the draft pool. One of the knocks on McCarthy was that he didn't have a strong arm, and there were more than a few of the sort of the draft analysts. I don't think it was like Kuiper or anybody, but I know I saw Greg Cosell and some other people as well refer to the tape at Michigan showing that he needed all of his strength to make, basic throws, and that was never going to work in the NFL. And in their assessment, he did not have an NFL caliber arm. And all I was saying this morning is that I watched him since the first rookie mini camp, through OTAs last year, through training camp, and now through one phase 2 workout and one OTA workout. And I don't see it. I don't see that concern. And I don't know if it was really still floating around that there's concerns about whether he has a strong enough arm, but and maybe the tape showed whatever people think the tape showed, but all I can say is that, I think I've seen enough of his throwing in practice, at least, and in one preseason game, to say that I don't see that as being an issue. He doesn't necessarily have the strongest arm in the history of the NFL, but, whatever the pre-draft assessments were of his arm strength, I think it appears to be fine to me. And some people responded saying, well, he threw 61 miles an hour at the combine, and that was 1 mile per hour short of the record or something like that. And I don't know that it's just a matter of how fast a person throws to decide whether they have an arm that can make all the NFL throws. But all I was saying is that based on my amateur eye, I don't see it being an issue. And hopefully if it were still floating around, we can move on from it.
But now, maybe the more essential question, can he be the face of the league?
Well, Anthony Edwards has apparently fallen short of that expectation. So
I've heard.
And I'm told that you need to be a family man to be to be a face of the league. But JJ's fiance just announced that they're going to have their first baby in September. Wow. So
okay.
that does qualify.
I guess that would indeed. Yeah, the inside joke there is the ongoing debate that rages almost every day on your network regarding the face of the league discussion, which it is interesting because I'm in the group that believes it's completely overcooked and overwrought and has become really very trite. But it does speak to a question. Do we have these sorts of debates in football? Is there? Because I don't remember much of a face of the league football discussion.
Well, I just feel like some of this has been a cycle. These things happen in a cycle. And there was a time where the public discussion about the NFL was much darker. It was much more about the health problems that players encounter, or the off the field stuff that was going on. You think back to Ray Rice and many other similar issues, some of the investigations, the cheating investigations, the bounty investigations. And at about the same time, everyone thought the NBA had it all figured out. There was great players and, the analytics had improved the quality of play, and Adam Silver should run for president, and and now it's almost flipped, and now the public discussion about the NFL is mostly what happens on the field. Does J.J. McCarthy have a strong enough arm? Does what do we think about the read option?
Yeah.
Is Patrick Mahomes? The worst it gets is Patrick Mahomes better than Tom Brady, or was the Patriots Super Bowl run all about Tom Brady or Bill Belichick? But we're very much in this kind of golden age of NFL discussion from a public standpoint, and the NBA appears to be unable to get people to talk about the actual product, and it's all about all the personalities and the issues and the problems and the failures, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you had retweeted, and I think I must have missed this, that there was that basically was it Windhorst was losing his mind while the Russo-Stephen A. Smith debate regarding the Anthony Edwards face of the league question is playing out. Is that correct?
Yeah. There was a clip of it was mostly. And then at the very end, Windhorst was saying, we should talk about the game. Can we talk about and then it cut off because that part wasn't interesting, I guess. But and I am entertained by Russo, especially. I think he I enjoy listening because it's so over the top and it's so clear that it's just a bit that I don't take it too seriously, and it's fun to listen to. But I do get the frustrations of people who want to talk about how this big game tonight is going to go, or how the game last night went. That is sort of the backbone of sports discussion.
Well, what's interesting about any quote unquote face of the league discussion is I think it's sometimes it's based on the wrong criteria, because I almost think that the notion of trying to predict or even to assign that particular title to anybody, I don't think it works that way. I think it tends to I don't think you can know it ahead of time. It happens organically, and it often doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether a player is the best player. It can be, but a lot of times it's a player who, for whatever reason, is really good, generally is going to compete for championships, probably has to win, at least one, and sort of captures the imagination of people for whatever the reason. It doesn't necessarily mean, the best example to me is, I don't think I think Joker is the face of the league. Even he's the best player in the league, but I'm not sure he moves the needle in quite the same way. And that's where I think some of the debate goes pear-shaped or sideways, that was he ready to be because really what they're asking is he ready to take the next step and be a player who leads a team to a championship? And I actually think it's not always the same in terms of that necessarily being, the face of the league.
Or leads the entire league out of the morass of where the NBA discussion is, and we hear players complain about it. We hear that the various former players on the various networks push back on that, and that becomes the discussion. And so, it's almost as if you need the idea of that is find someone someone who's just such a transcendent player and personality and community person, and the story that they, biographical story that just becomes so overwhelmingly, congruent with the first thing people think about when they think about the NBA, or the first thing they think about the NFL, that it raises the entire boat to a level where people are enjoying the discussions, enjoying the product, enjoying what actually happens on the court or on the field, as opposed to, sort of finding these manufactured dramas to focus on.
Has any news come out of Vikings OTAs? Or maybe I'll rephrase it. What's the biggest morsel of news from your perspective so far out of the Vikings OTAs?
I think it's that Justin Jefferson is there. Yeah. The past 2 years, he was kind of off seasons. he was working through the contract situation. It didn't work out that first year, and then he came back and they got it done towards the end of last year's off season. And I don't think that was the only reason he stayed away. Like, he was, doing a lot of traveling and marketing and all that, and there was never any question about whether he was coming into camp in shape. But and these are voluntary, and I always make sure I say that at the top, that like there shouldn't be any public pressure on any of these players to attend. And I don't think there was for Justin, but and so I kind of just thought, like, this is his process, and he, gets ready for the season on his own, and he does come to mandatory minicamp, so there's no like drama there. But apparently he's been there, pretty regularly. He was there Tuesday and Wednesday for the first two official OTAs, but he's also been around at other parts of the off-season program as well, where they're just lifting, or they're just like on the field with no helmets and no coaches kind of thing. And so Kevin O'Connell said yesterday that, they've had a lot of talks, not necessarily about reporting to voluntary stuff, but just reminding JJ that he's an energy creator for the team and the entire building. And when he, as one of the best players in the league, is there, working hard in May and June, that sort of sets a tone for the rest of the league, or the rest of the team. But I also think that, like, we can't discount the importance of him and JJ McCarthy getting a lot of reps together over this period, because, and I asked JJ about this yesterday, and he didn't really know the answer, but I don't think they hardly had any time, like, on the field in team drills together, because JJ was mostly working for the second team while Sam Darnold and Justin were working with the first team. And so there's all kinds of things that have to happen between a quarterback and receiver, other than just both of them knowing what the responsibilities are on the play, like knowing where a receiver likes the ball thrown, knowing how covered or not covered he needs to be in order to throw the ball. And that's going to be an ongoing process. But I think it's let's not discount how important and that is, that those two guys are getting work together before any of the mandatory stuff starts happening.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Our new guard, Will Fries, he apparently is still rehabbing, so to speak, so we're not going to see much or any of him likely until training camp. Is that correct?
That's what it sounds like, yeah. He was not out there yesterday. I think he is in town. He's in the building, but he had a really nasty, and we didn't talk much about this overall because there was a lot of news in the off season, but he had a pretty nasty injury in October where a guy fell on his leg and had fractured his leg in a pretty nasty way. And so he's still working through that. The expectation is he'll be ready when training camp starts. And that they'll be full speed ahead at that point. And, in these non-padded practices, offensive linemen in particular, like it's all pass blocking. There's not a lot of run stuff that can really happen from a physical standpoint. So I don't know how much he's missing or not, or going to be behind or not when he does get on the field, but that is where he's at with that injury.
You're suggesting also that if we're looking for it, and we generally are, the Vikings have more bulletin board material going into next season. Is that correct?
In which regard? Because there always is. I assume you're talking about the ESPN FPI. Yeah, that was interesting because that's our version of the sort of analytics rankings and our model for how the season is going to go. And, here locally, we've talked about the $300+ million that they spent to fortify the roster for a rookie quarterback. But they're also, and then the expectations that go along with a roster like this and the season they had last year and the reigning coach of the year, et cetera, et cetera. But they're also in a tough division, and our ESPN modeling has them as the third best team in the division. I think 15th overall in the league, which would basically say they're an average team. And maybe that'll play out. Maybe it won't. But at this point, to have the Lions and the Packers significantly ahead of you and the Bears only one spot behind isn't indicative of a team that won 14 games last year.
What do you make from afar of the Caleb Williams? I think yesterday gave a briefing in which he attempted to put out whatever fire, to the extent that people believe there was a fire related to the book revelations about his desire, his infatuation with the Vikings and KOC in particular, and then his, at least his dad's efforts to basically say, God, the Bears, man, do we really want to mess with the Bears? What should we do here? What did you make of Caleb, I think, but even before he was asked, bringing that up at a media session yesterday? And did he, if there is still a fire on regarding this story, did he put it out yesterday?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Like, I mean, I think it was like a 3 or 4 minute statement that he gave off the cuff yesterday to address it. And the important thing is he didn't deny anything that was said pre-draft, or deny the things that we saw with our own eyes about how difficult last season was for him and the team. But he just emphasized the part that was in the excerpt of the book, but didn't get as much of the attention, was that after he visited the building, Hallis Hall, before the draft, and the Bears told him, "We're drafting you, man. Like, get ready, you're coming." Like, he did feel okay about it, and he still feels fine about it. And he wanted to emphasize that, like, those thoughts were prior to, the point at which he actually accepted the fact that he was coming to Chicago and he was going to be fine with it. And he even, I think, kind of like put the kibosh on his dad and said, "Look, I kind of shut my dad down. Like, he has his opinions. He's smart. He's an adult. He can say what he wants and feel how he wants. But, like, this is me. This is my career. And this is how I feel about it." So I think I don't really think that he's in a bad spot. I think that people, like, even Bears fans, in my sense, like, they from what I can tell, like, they understand the history as well as anybody. Yes. And they probably appreciate his candor pre-draft and, like, his ability to see what he was getting into. And that's really all it was. And so I think it was good that he got that out and got, I wouldn't say he got in front of it because it's been out for a while, but he did address it in an honest way. Didn't try to say that he was misquoted or his dad was misquoted or taken out of context. He just said, "Hey, look, we went through that process, and when I got to the end of the process, I felt good about it." And as long as he, says that, I don't know if I were a Bears fan or somebody who works for the Bears or plays for the Bears or coaches for the Bears that I would be too concerned about it.
Well, knowing what I think most of us do about the previous coaching regime, you might call into question his judgment at that point. But yeah, nobody's going to get too mad at him in all seriousness. And I think you nailed it. He didn't. The smart thing is he didn't pretend it was all made up. He just basically said it's old news. That we kind of got past it. And so once I'm here, I was committed to the bit, and it didn't work out very well. And we got a new coaching staff. I want to follow it up with one thing that, I think we can broaden it out beyond just the Bears, and it's about body language, because I saw a story indicating that one of the things that apparently the new head coach there has talked to him about is body language, the sense that we got to improve, some of the shots. And there were some shots of Caleb on the sidelines where he's like laying down on the bench and he's looking, like just devastated and so forth. And I'm wondering, in all the time you've covered, how much do coaches, do you think, in organizations coach that, get into that, make that an issue? It's been a big topic for the Wolves, obviously, the way the series ended, especially the Julius Randle body language. Sometimes you can make too much of it. But in your experience, do organizations pay attention to that? Do teams and coaches, are they willing to talk about that stuff and even confront players on that? Or is that more of interest to folks like you and me?
No, it's absolutely a big part of what they look at, especially like in the draft process when you're looking at college players and how they reacted to adversity or how they reacted to various situations. That they don't. It's not language per se, but it's the lens that it gives them to see how they're taking, how they compete and how they're taking in the fact that things are not going well. So, whether or not like they slump their head or they put their head down or they smack something or I think I saw a phrase like palms up. There's a lot of palms up from Caleb Williams. In other words, like, what are we doing kind of stuff. And so, there's a little bit of like, you don't want to show up coaches, you don't want to show up players, but it's more like when you encounter something that didn't work, even if it wasn't your fault, even if everyone knows it's the coach's fault or something bad happened, like, are you just getting frustrated by it, or are you redoubling your efforts to fix it? Are you determined? Are you competitive? Like, and they do look at that a lot. And that's a big part of, whether a player has the level of competitiveness that they want, if they quote unquote love football the way that they want them to love it. And it's not just like what you look and how you react when things are going well, but it's probably more important, how you react to things when they're not. So I don't know that if they're like looking for keywords, like actual physical slumping, but like it's how do they react to when things go wrong, and that's very important in evaluating pro athletes.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense across the board. Yeah, and that, I guess supposedly Ben Johnson had acknowledged that, and Williams would talked about it as well. The idea of that's something that we're trying to. And look, when you're a new coach, I think it's always easier, right? Because you've got the fresh lease on life, and you're in the honeymoon period. But I think it is always an interesting conversation, and sometimes we on the outside can read too much into certain body language, and sometimes it is telling, and sometimes it makes a difference. And I'm curious. That's why I was curious to find out how teams themselves handle that. Anything else that we got to get to? What's the next big date? What's the next big threshold we need to worry about from a date standpoint?
We're gonna have open to the media OTAs probably like once a week here for the next few weeks, and then the mandatory mini camp, which I don't think is going to look a whole lot different, other than the fact that it's mandatory for players to be there, is like June 10th through 12th. The week after that, they have a couple more OTAs. Last year, those were just for the young players on their, years 1 through 4, and the veterans were sent off to the summer. And so we'll see if that's the case at that point. But only a couple more weeks here, and then we break for the summer and come back when training camp begins.
Do we have what's the training? Are we late July as usual, I assume?
Yeah, they have not released a date on that yet, but I'm expecting it'll be that last week in July at some point.
So now, will you do the double duty in Europe?
It's being discussed. It's not it's a big financial commitment.
It is.
But we're looking at it, and I certainly would love to do it. Mm-hmm. It's never gonna, might never happen again. Although I think if it goes smoothly, I think the NFL is certainly watching it very carefully to see, as they try to build a more, sort of a more structured, fuller schedule internationally, whether it's in Europe or elsewhere. What does it look like to have a team in, the UK time zone for 2 weeks? And how does that affect the rest of their season, and how does it affect the time that they're there as well? There's no danger that the Vikings will move to either Dublin or London, is there? If it goes really well, that's not going to happen, is it? I got to check their lease on US Bank Stadium. I had not thought about that, but my guess is we're safe for now. Yeah. We didn't get our money. Don't we want money to put like a big security fence around the People's Stadium? Isn't that what we're looking for? A little help from the state on that? Yes, I did see that. I don't know the details of it. I thought that the birds were finding that there's plenty of security around it whenever they get too close to the stadium, but maybe it's not just for the birds. We haven't heard much about the birds lately, have we? It's been a little quieter on that front. Are fewer of them dying, or we just lost our momentum on that issue? I think the story played itself out. Yeah. We know what's happening, and there's still plenty of birds left for the rest of the world. Thank you, Seifert. We appreciate you. Okay, Dan. Be good. That's Kevin Seifert. You can read him via ESPN.com. I got much earlier in the show a very provocative, I think interesting question, wanting to know which loss registers higher on the, I guess you could say, cataclysmic scale. 41 Donut Vikings or Timberwolves Oklahoma City Thunder during that Category 5 thunderstorm last night. I'll give you my own view on that. We'll get Gaardsy's as well when we come.
is set to wrap up his Roll with the Punches tour at Target Center November 26th, and you could be there. Check out our contest page to see how you can enter to win a pair of tickets. KFAN.com, keyword contests.
As the Timberwolves were falling behind, 26-9 at the quarter, 65-32 at the half. The 41 donut joke came up. The infamous NFC title game loss after the 2000 season, I think in January of 2001, as a comparison, was this a basketball version of 41 donut, because you really can't be shut out in a pro basketball game. I don't think that's ever happened.
Well, we tried.
Forfeit.
After the first possession, we did our damnedest.
It does appear that's the case. I lean, if you forced me, 41 donuts worse. In part because I think I don't view that particular New York Giants team as a juggernaut. Now, they did have a good record. I think they were like 11-5, 12-4 that year. So they had a legitimate record. But my recollection is they were underdogs at home in the NFC title game.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that the Vikings went into that game organizationally feeling like, we might as well plan for the bowl. We're going. There's not any question about it. And they were as gobsmacked as anybody that not only that they lost at all, let alone 41 Donut, which, of course, after the game, Randy Moss is the guy who named it 41 Donut. So I would say last night was embarrassing. It was troubling. But I'm still going to say a 41 Donut is on a different plateau. Oklahoma City doesn't have a pedigree yet of championship teams, right? But they have their record this year was exemplary. One of the 5 or 6 best records in the history of the league.
Correct.
Their victory margin is the greatest in NBA history. I think now they're up to 62 victories, double-digit victories between regular season and postseason. So that's not me letting them off the hook, because there is no excuse for the lack of competitiveness in the game, as we've discussed throughout the show. But that Giants team, which, by the way, got destroyed in the Super Bowl by the Ravens, I think like by 34-7, something like that, the next week or 2 weeks later, was quarterbacked by against anybody else, fairly mediocre guy named Kerry Collins. Great college quarterback, but didn't do much as a pro. Against us, he looked like John Unitas. 5 touchdown passes, I recall, in the first half of the game. So I know when you factor in the competition, I would say I'm still going to say 41 Donut is more embarrassing than what took place last night, if you force me to have to draw a distinction.
Yeah, I understand the comparison. I don't even think it's close. The competition and the circumstance, that was to go to the Super Bowl. Correct. For the first time since the 70s, a place that they had not been since then and have not been in the times past.
This is to go to the Super Bowl in a sense.
It is, but I feel like it would have to be a game 7 almost.
Right.
Like where all you have to do is win the game and get yourself in.
Yeah.
The Wolves, I'm not excusing it either. It's a little more, and you started the game even up. The Wolves started last night 3-1. It's obvious they were ready for Cabo. They wanted to watch, because they must think the Pacers are going to knock out the Knicks tonight, and they want to see their graphic on TNT. They want to see their Cancun graphic.
Yeah, tonight's the night, right? Could be the last night of TNT
exactly.
NBA basketball.
So they played like a team that wanted to make sure they could see how the TNT crew would illustrate the Wolves going on vacation, going fishing. That's how they played. You just win the game and you're in the Super Bowl for the first time ever. So it's a little bit apples and oranges, but I would say 41 Donut.
Well,
for sure.
I think
I get the instinct to compare because
absolutely, it was bad. But
I turned that game off at halftime too.
Yeah, I think it's 41 Donut. And again, I mean, we'll see. Maybe if Oklahoma City gets to the NBA Finals and gets swept, we'll go, whoa, wait a minute.
That's what I'm worried about.
That's the scary part.
But I don't think it'll happen.
I don't either. Although again, I think we got to take a long, hard look at the Denver, as we talked about with Sam Mitchell. And maybe we're leaving out. Maybe it's not just that Adelman did a really good job under a difficult circumstance, but we are reminded once again of just how absurdly good, if we didn't already know it, how absurdly good Joker is, right? That may be part of the story, although in Game 7, as we talked about, he was also, by his standards, non-competitive. But I must say, if you grade on consistently, what I view as him being non-competitive in Game 7 still was far more competitive than any Timberwolves were in Game 5 last night. So it's pretty much all relative. One other Wolves thought. There's been some discussion and some concern about the post-game scrum commentary from Anthony Edwards that he seemed to be almost dismissing how bad he should feel on the basis of the Wolves losing the way they did in Game 5 for the second straight year. Could he have chosen his words better? Yeah. I'm not all that. I don't get all that. I didn't get all that worked up about his approach. To be honest with you, I'm a little more bothered by what you provided to us during the top 5 from Finchy than what Edwards says, because Edwards, I think, has always marched to the beat of his own drummer anyway about a lot of stuff he has said. My guess is that Edwards is unhappy and embarrassed, even if he didn't come out and say it, and maybe he should have. I don't know. But for the people who are constantly talking about, all right, there's a mentality that he's got to get to, that place is the most important thing going forward. He's got to learn, and he's young, and he's still got time to do it, to become a better leader, since he is the straw that stirs the drink. I think we're missing the boat there. What Anthony Edwards, to me, more than anything, it's because there's a lot of talk about how he handles the moments of the pressure of being the guy. And when you try to score, when the ability to survey game conditions in real time and to say, here's what I need to do right now, even if they're double teaming me. Here's what I need to do 6 possessions later. All that's important. But you know what I think is more important? Improving his game so that whatever he decides he wants and needs to do mentally, he's capable of it. Sam Mitchell brought it up. Anthony Edwards, it sounds crazy given how skilled he is at a young age, but he needs to become a better ball handler.
Yeah.
He is not as skilled a ball handler as Shea, for example. Now, it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is and has been a point guard, right? Edwards is a shooting guard in the classic sense, being asked to do more than that in a league where all the roles have been blurred. But to me, if you want to get better and allegedly get better mentally, it's sharpen the skills that give you the best chance then to, all right, I'm going to get through this broken court. I'm going to get to the right place because, and I'm going to be able to control the ball in a way that I'm not going to dribble it off my knee or off somebody else's foot, right? That's part of what, to me, will ultimately determine whether he takes the quote-unquote next step, is improving some skills. Johnny brought up also a belief that he's still not in the kind of shape
that's where I wanted to go,
that he needs to be.
That's
and
exactly
if there's
where I wanted
some
to go.
truth to that,
I think there is.
Then that also has to be handled, because that's the physical, the mental stuff's important. But even if you get the mental stuff mastered, if physically you can't do the things that your brain's telling you in this circumstance you need to do, it's not going to matter, right? You got to be able to do that better. And we've talked about it a lot. Johnny has offered the analytics, and I don't know how practicing can make you better here in the gym in the off season. He's got to finish better. He's not a great finisher at the basket. And I do buy the notion that some of it is you have to worry less about trying to attract the foul and more about scoring. And by doing that, I think there's a good chance a byproduct of getting better there is you're going to get the foul, or more likely to get the foul. But that's another part of his game that has to improve. So there's actual basketball stuff to me that's every bit as important as him figuring out the mental side of this thing.
Johnny mentioned it yesterday, and I've been talking to some people the last few weeks about it, because last year Ant straight up said he had nothing left in the Western Conference Finals, right?
Yes, and that was clear.
Yeah, and he said it. He goes, by the end of that series, I had nothing, lift on my jumper. I had no legs.
He couldn't chase Kyrie around. That was his problem.
That's another big part. And it's hard to say that Anthony Edwards is not in good shape. Like, because he's not Luka, right?
No, definitely not.
He's not even Joker, and he's obviously a different player than both of those guys. But I do think there's, what's the word for it? A sharpening of it, where I don't know if you lose 10 or 15 pounds and it is just more straight muscle or whatever. You lean out a little bit.
Right.
Because I do think part of the reason why one of the criticisms recently has been, well, he gets off the ball and then he just stands there. He doesn't do anything. I'm not saying he ever has to be Steph Curry, but I do think some of that is also energy preservation, where I'm not going to run around crazy without the ball all this time when I can just go back and get it.
Yeah,
or
right.
Like, because I do think there's some easier ways to free him up off the ball if he's willing to run off some more screens or run around a little bit more. And you look at any of the great two guards, and specifically in the old days, really in any time of basketball, like, you got to move a little bit. It's not just kick out to half court, get the ball, and then cook. It's other stuff. And I don't know. I think that sometimes is a conditioning thing.
Well, it might be, because I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody was doing a highlight yesterday, and it wasn't
Michael Malone before the game.
Oh, that may have been what it was. And I don't even know if the subject was how stationary Ant can be, but it showed how stationary Edwards is, just watching the play
on the wing.
And so then part of that makes me wonder too. It's like, well, what are you guys drilling in him? Is that he's tired, or is it, well, the system really doesn't, we don't pass and cut, we don't screen in a way that he even knows what he's supposed to do in that situation? Because what it seems to be now is we got to play him off the ball a little bit. And by that we mean, Ant, don't be afraid to give up the ball, and then we'll give it back to you. But if you're giving it back to him at a place where he's just as stationary, what does that really do other than you've given it up to give it back to him?
Right.
The idea is you'd think they're in the flow of a play, come off a pick, and suddenly when Conley would whip a pass to him on the right wing, he's open for an 18-foot shot. We do not see hardly any of that in this offense.
Not very often. And do you know what Lou Dort is doing while Anthony Edwards is standing right there?
What's that?
He's standing right next to him, having to do nothing. And you know who loves that? Lou Dort. Because he can
how hard he has to work defensively the rest of the time.
And because he's not worried about, he's not helping. Right, and that was, I think, Malone's point, too, in that it was pregame, I think, is what you're talking about. They showed a couple of videos, and Malone said, he's not leaving. He's not going to do anything, so he's on Ant. He's standing there. And so he gets the ball back, and Lou Dort's there. Like, it doesn't even do him any good to get the ball back there because he hasn't moved.
All right, top of the hour pause, half hour yet to go. And as we said much earlier in the show, the sad reality is the Target Center cage is for rent for Friday night. There will be no Game 6.
Fan on the Farm. Send in your tractor talkbacks. KFAN and Sucut Manufacturing bring you Fan on the Farm each day through the end of the month. So that means tomorrow, 9 to noon, we'll be taking your tractor talkbacks, where one farmer will be chosen to receive a Sucut prize pack, including a Carhartt cooler and a Brewmate Growler canteen. Get a full list of rules at KFAN.com/farm. Sucut Manufacturing Company, helping farmers feed and fuel the world.
Well, Wolves fans, are they now emotionally checked out, traumatized by the way it wrapped up last night? Will they detach themselves from the rest of the NBA playoffs now, including their former guy, Cat, trying to stay alive on the other side of the bracket? Because he could be eliminated tonight, too.
He could be.
Now, they're at home.
They are.
Rather than the road. They are favored.
I see Spike Lee right now.
And
you think we could get Spike to the cage if we ever play them in the finals?
Yes.
I think we could. He seems available.
He does seem. Now, again, I'm sure there might be a layer or two you got to get through. But
I've got time to figure it out now. I've got time to plant the seeds.
All those dreams have certainly died. I think they're like 4-4. I expect the Knicks to win tonight. I'd be surprised if they don't, but I think I like the Pacers' chances to win in 6. But pretty much every game in this, it was every but one. I mean, most of the games in this series have been a lot closer than the Wolves Thunder series, at least. they've been competitive.
I think each team could make a case that they could have won any of the games. Certainly the Knicks, with how they melted down in game one. That's what they're going to have, that haunting moment if they don't win this series, right?
Yes.
There's not a lot of
yes, for sure.
Not a lot of what ifs in this Wolves series. Obviously, what if they won game four?
Game four.
That's obviously the big one. But
according to Sam Mitchell, we would have won it because Cat would have gotten a couple of rebounds.
Yeah.
Is he too optimistic, you think? He said earlier, between 3:30 and 4, that series would be at least tied 2-2 going into game 5. He didn't really say what would have happened in 5.
Right.
But I think his point was, even if the Wolves got killed in 5, the series was not going to be over.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. It's such a and what he has been as effective in the prior 2 series as Randall was. That's the thing that's so weird about how this goes. But it is what I think playoff veterans understand and accept, even if they think it's warped, is you have to understand that when you're by the time you get to the Final Four, and especially the Final 2, everything is dramatized. So, and there's the chance that people are going to overreact, but that's the nature of it. Almost becomes like football at the end, right? The last couple games, because you go, well, this is for everything. And so Luka's the best example from a year ago. Luka, just toys with us, right? And really all the way through to that point. They beat us in 5. We were no more competitive in Game 5 at home a year ago than we were in Game 5 in Oklahoma City last night. And then you get to the championship round, and Luka got bludgeoned.
Yeah.
From a media standpoint, because he got his defensive deficiencies for the first time in their playoff run. They were up against a team that could expose him, right? Because they had 5 people who could score. And the point is, you can't get hung up on, well, is that really fair? People are going to analyze on the basis of every game they see. And they're going to, in some cases, as odd as it sounds, they might even change their opinion about that player more dramatically than they should, simply because we're so hyper-focused on that game and each quarter,
right,
and overtime and whatever the case may be.
And the question then becomes, the question always kind of is, can you win a title with this player or this team or this group or this coach?
Right.
And wasn't it Jokic who was asked about it after they lost?
Yes.
7 games, right, to the OKC team that just kicked us up and down the court for the majority of 5 games. And he was pretty honest. He said, well, we didn't, so we can't. And I'm guessing they're probably going to have some changes, right? Like, that's because you get to this level and you go, okay, the air is very thin. It's harder to win at this level.
Yes.
So the questions almost become easier to answer a little bit, because you say, can you win a title with player X or player Y? And then if you haven't, the answer is no. And then you have to really be right to bet and to guess. And that's what the Wolves have to decide now. And the 2 biggest ones I'm thinking of would be Randall and Nas.
Yeah, the game that comes up is, like you said, you don't want to overreact, but you also don't want to delude yourself. And that's where the GMs are at their best or at their worst, right? Is being able to kind of sift through all the noise and all the adrenaline rush, good or bad, at the end of a series like this, and to say, no. We're doubling down on this. If we tweak here, we have a better chance running this back or whatever. Because somebody said earlier that they mentioned, well, you can say the Cat trade was big, but we did run it back with everybody else, 5 of the top 6.
That's
absurd. If the one that you've traded away is literally your second best player,
who's an All-NBA player again this season,
exactly, then it's a significant departure. That's not me saying they shouldn't have done it, because again, let's face it, a lot of the reason they did it was financial, and maybe they felt from a basketball standpoint it could be better than it was. I will tell you that for me, now that we have a whole season and postseason to look at this thing, and because we've tended to concentrate on Randall. When the trade was made, the thing that helped convince me that it was worth the risk is a great belief in DiVincenzo. And I have not seen what I thought I would see consistently from him. I can't, so is that this again because it takes time to figure this thing out, and you don't, or maybe he had a little bit of an off season, and that doesn't mean you just give up on him? Or does it mean he's streaky good, but he's not quite what I thought he was in terms of how important it is to keep him? Because given again, depending on what's available, because there's players who we might not even know about that they're talking about, right? There's going to be some moves in this league. That's a chip I would be willing to move depending on what I get back, because you're going to have to give up something.
Yep.
And he's
got a great contract. Regardless of what you think of how he played, inconsistent or not, his contract is very, very manageable.
Yeah. And you heard Mitchell, or maybe you didn't. I said, because he's on the Durant train, but I said, what if they insist on Jaden? And he said, I won't do that.
I wouldn't either.
And the Wolves so far have been adamant about that particular point.
I think he took a huge leap in consistency. And last night notwithstanding, because those first 6 shots were dreadful, right? But how many times did he keep them in a game offensively?
Open shots, yeah.
They were, but he was terrific in the playoffs.
Yes.
And I think through most of the season, he was very good. I think he continues to get better. And his contract for what he does as a two-way player, he signed the rookie extension like Ant did, but his was obviously not the max. I think he's in the high teens or 20s maybe. So I've really come a long way on Jaden being a year ago at this time. I wasn't sure. I didn't think he was consistent enough. I think he has become consistent enough for me to absolutely bet on that.
All right, let's wrap things up, give you a couple of highlights from today's show, and give you a preview of what we might expect tomorrow when we will not be previewing a Game 6 in this series.
Should we do the cage?
To the delight of the state of hockey, to the utter fascination and celebration in the state of hockey.
Show Wrap is presented by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
Is this rumor true? Speaking of the state of hockey, we got some hockey tonight on the Fan?
We do.
Is that right?
Game 5, Oilers and Stars.
They could wrap it up tonight, right, Edmonton?
They could, where Florida awaits them.
Oilers up now 3-1. I'm assuming the North Stars fans here are rooting for Edmonton to put Dallas out of its misery, right?
Norm Green still sucks.
That's exactly right. So that's Fan on Demand will precede Game 5. Edmonton, Dallas with the Oilers up, as you mentioned, 3-1. Tomorrow, we had intended to include the inbox today, but we had a good, heavy schedule of guests. So we are moving the inbox to tomorrow. Many of you have already contributed.
We have a nice start.
That's good. And then we'll remind folks tomorrow if they want to get in on the fun as well. Friday being the day tomorrow, Ben Gessling will join. And we had another really adventuresome encounter with Lavelle E. Neal III last Friday. And so we anxiously await how it might go on tomorrow's program as well. You have the Rocco soundbite. You'll have that ready for
Thank you for the reminder.
Tomorrow.
Yes, about Cody Clemens.
Yeah. That'll be quite entertaining. And we'll get into some other stuff as well. So we are down to it now. Yeah. So we got, how much extra time did we get again? About a month extra coverage of the Wolves? How long have we been in this?
I think it started like April 20th, right around there. Because the play-ins were like April 15th, 16th, 17th.
So an extra like 6 weeks, 5 weeks?
Yeah, 5.5 weeks. It was great.
It's not bad.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And my favorite part, I tweeted about it today, is Sam Mitchell, Mitch Lawrence, Tom Crean, obviously Johnny Athletic. I'm sure he just landed, or if he hasn't been home all day. Johnny, our workhorse, who we have on constantly, but mixing in Chris Hine, Jace Frederick, who he can join, Double T. I just love the guests that we get to have on to talk specifically about whatever Wolves series is going on.
Do we have to now worry? Didn't Seifert today, and we thank him for his contributions. We had Sam Mitchell at 3:30, Seifert at 5:15, and ball guy Kevin Kernan at 4:30. Did Seifert tell us that JJ, as in, he's talking about JJ McCarthy, right? Is going to have a kid?
Yes.
So now we got to worry about him getting sleep.
I know.
chances are he'll be better on the road.
Right.
Well, maybe that's the beauty of them having the games in Europe.
2 weeks in
you got 2
Dublin
weeks where you
and
don't have to worry about
Ireland
the kid
and
waking you up like that. That was saddling the several Wolves players over the course of this regular season.
There's been
correct?
a lot of talk, like Anthony Edwards talked last night about how bad this season got at points. Chris Finch said it wasn't the most fun season ever. I think it shows you how many excuses they were trying to find for how bad it was when the poor children got
thrown under the bus.
Just got torched.
Yeah.
I can't even call them strays. They were direct hits of, got a lot of kids in this locker room. Is that why you guys suck at home? And so the players are like, yeah, maybe. I mean, the kids.
Yeah.
That shows you how bad it got at times.
By the way, the stat earlier in the playoffs was that unlike many seasons in NBA history, home court wasn't meaning all of that much in the playoffs this year until apparently the Wolves took on Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma still matters.
They
don't let anybody in.
Well, that must be it.
You have to be from Oklahoma.
God, and they even have the deal where
the stripe.
It's
a cult.
Remarkable. It is absolutely.
And they're going to get rewarded. We need to be more like that. But you won't wear the shirt.
They got more draft picks coming.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, somebody's ego is going to get out of control, though, right? That always happens.
It might be the local kid.
Think so? Interesting.
If I'm picking on that team.
That'd be very interesting. He kicked our ass most of the series.
He was great.
He was outstanding.
He was really good.
Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you Friday at 3.
A lot of things that are easily correctable.
Where are we, America?